I cannot take what is not mine, Jane whispered to herself as the rain-slicked street reflected the neon glow of the city lights. Her hand clutching the leather wallet she had just found lying near the cafe curb, the heavy weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders as she considered the consequences of any choice. Single mom of 2 young children, she knew every dollar counted. Yet the crisp bills inside this wallet represented far more than she could ever hope to earn in a month, and she felt a pang of anxiety mixed with determination as she scanned the address written neatly on a card within, realizing it belonged to someone wealthy, someone powerful, someone who could never imagine her struggling for rent or groceries. But still, her conscience would not allow her to keep it, every instinct screaming honesty and decency, compelling her forward despite the storm, her umbrella flicking with each gust of wind as she navigated puddles and uneven sidewalks. Imagining the look on the owner's face, the internal debate consuming her thoughts, she pictured the moment she would hand it over, the anticipation mingling with fear, wondering if she would be judged, ignored, or dismissed. Yet Jane pressed on, her coat soaked at the hem, shoes splashing through shallow water, every step a testament to her integrity. The city, buzzing around her with evening traffic and distant chatter, lights flickering off wet surfaces, reflections doubling the reality of her hurried march. And as she reached the grand building that the address pointed to, the doors looming, polished and imposing, she paused to catch her breath, heart racing with a mix of fear and pride, knowing that this simple act of returning a lost wallet could ripple into unexpected consequences, defining the day, the week, maybe even the future. As she finally pushed through the heavy doors into the warmth and scent of polished wood and faint cologne, greeted by the receptionist who offered a curious glance, Jane explained she had found a wallet outside, a pause hanging between them before she was directed to wait in a small, quiet lounge, the minutes stretching slowly, her mind wandering to her children waiting at home, dinner half prepared, laundry undone, the ordinary struggles that grounded her reality, yet intertwined with this extraordinary moment of ethical choice. And then he arrived, Mark, the billionaire whose name was familiar through headlines and business journals, entering with a calm yet commanding presence. His eyes meeting hers with subtle intrigue, a hint of surprise flickering as he noticed her soaked coat and earnest expression, the wallet in her hands bridging the gap between 2 worlds so different, yet momentarily connected through a single, honest decision. Jane extended it carefully, the weight of the bills and cards symbolic of trust and moral courage. And as Mark took it, he smiled, a mixture of relief and admiration passing across his face, acknowledging her integrity without a word, a simple nod conveying more than any conversation could. And in that instant, Jane felt a swell of quiet triumph, knowing she had done the right thing despite personal inconvenience. Despite the storm, and the bustling city beyond the windows seemed to pause around this small act, a testament to the power of honesty and the unforeseen significance of seemingly minor choices. Mark looked down at the wallet for a moment before opening it and confirming that everything was still inside. The cash, the credit cards, the identification documents, and even a folded note he had forgotten was there remained untouched. For a man who managed companies worth hundreds of millions of dollars, the contents themselves were not what mattered. What captured his attention was the person standing in front of him. Jane did not appear interested in recognition. She was not waiting for praise. In fact, she looked slightly uncomfortable being the center of attention at all. Thank you, Mark said sincerely. Most people would not have gone through this much trouble. Jane offered a small smile. I just did what I would hope someone would do for me. Her answer was simple, yet something about it stayed with him. Over the years, Mark had met countless people, investors, executives, politicians, celebrities, and entrepreneurs passed through his life regularly. Many impressed him with their intelligence or ambition. Very few impressed him with their character. Jane checked the time on her phone and immediately looked concerned. I should get going. My children are waiting for me. Mark nodded. Of course. For a brief moment, he considered offering her a reward. Then he hesitated. Something told him that simply handing her money would diminish what she had done. At least let me arrange a car to take you home, he suggested. Jane politely shook her head. Thank you, but I will be fine. Before he could say anything else, she wished him a good evening and walked toward the lobby doors. Mark watched her leave. Rain still fell outside as she disappeared into the city. Most people entered his life because they wanted something. Jane had left without asking for anything at all. Meanwhile, Jane hurried toward the bus stop. Her thoughts quickly shifted back to everyday concerns. The electric bill was due next week. One of her children needed new shoes for school. Her refrigerator needed groceries. Life did not pause simply because she had returned a billionaire's wallet. By the time she reached her small apartment building, the rain had softened into a light drizzle. As soon as she opened the door, two excited children rushed toward her. 8-year-old Ethan wrapped his arms around her waist, while 6-year-old Lily proudly showed her a drawing she had made after school. Instantly, the stress of the day seemed lighter. "Did you have a good day?" Jane asked as she hung up her coat. The children answered at the same time, causing all three to laugh. Later that evening, after dinner and homework, Jane sat alone at the kitchen table reviewing monthly expenses. The numbers were discouraging. She worked hard, yet every dollar already seemed assigned to something important. There was little room for mistakes. Still, she refused to feel defeated. She closed the notebook and reminded herself that tomorrow was another opportunity to move forward. Across the city, Mark sat in his office overlooking the skyline. He should have been reviewing reports, but his thoughts kept returning to Jane. Something about her honesty felt increasingly rare. Curious, he asked his assistant to learn only basic information about the woman who had returned the wallet. Nothing intrusive, just enough to understand who she was. The following morning, a brief report landed on his desk. Single mother, 2 children, administrative assistant at a small medical office. No history of financial problems, legal issues, or public attention. An ordinary woman living an ordinary life. Yet the more Mark read, the more extraordinary she seemed. For reasons he could not fully explain, he found himself wondering whether their paths would cross again, unaware that fate was already preparing exactly that opportunity. Over the next several days, life settled back into its familiar rhythm for Jane. Every morning began before sunrise. She prepared breakfast, packed lunches, checked homework assignments, and made sure Ethan and Lily were ready for school before heading to work herself. The routine was exhausting, yet it gave her comfort. Her children were healthy, safe, and growing into kind young people. That alone made every sacrifice worthwhile. At the small medical office where she worked as an administrative assistant, Jane handled appointments, answered phones, and helped patients navigate paperwork. It was not glamorous work, but she took pride in doing it well. Her coworkers appreciated her reliability, and patients often commented on her patience and warm smile. Few people knew how much effort it took for her to maintain that positivity. Behind every smile was a carefully balanced budget, a long list of responsibilities, and a constant determination not to let challenges define her life. Meanwhile, Mark found himself thinking about Jane more often than he expected. The brief report from his assistant had answered some questions, but it had also created new ones. What kind of person remained so honest despite facing financial pressure? What allowed her to remain optimistic while carrying so much responsibility? The questions lingered in his mind. One Friday afternoon, fate presented an unexpected opportunity. Mark had agreed to sponsor a community literacy event at a public library on the east side of the city. The program provided books and educational resources to local families. It was a cause he strongly supported, although he usually attended such events briefly before returning to work. As he entered the library that afternoon, he immediately noticed a familiar face. Jane was there with Ethan and Lily. She was helping volunteers organize children's books while her son and daughter excitedly browsed the reading tables. Mark paused for a moment, surprised by the coincidence. Across the room, Jane looked up and recognized him as well. Her expression reflected the same surprise. A few moments later, they found themselves standing near a display of children's novels, exchanging polite greetings. Unlike their first meeting, there was no urgency and no lost wallet between them. The conversation flowed naturally. Mark learned that Jane volunteered at community events whenever her schedule allowed. Jane discovered that Mark genuinely cared about educational programs and local charities rather than simply lending his name to them. As they talked, Ethan and Lily wandered over carrying books they hoped to borrow. The children greeted Mark politely, and he introduced himself with an easy smile. Watching Jane interact with her children revealed another side of her character. She listened carefully, encouraged their curiosity, and celebrated even small accomplishments. The affection between them was obvious. Mark could not help admiring it. As the event continued, they spent more time together helping distribute books and answer questions from families. By the end of the afternoon, both realized they had spoken far longer than either expected. When the event concluded, Jane gathered her children and prepared to leave. Before she walked away, Mark thanked her for the conversation. Jane smiled and thanked him as well. Neither mentioned it aloud, but both sensed that their second meeting felt far less accidental than the first. And as Jane drove home with Ethan and Lily chatting excitedly in the back seat, she found herself wondering why the billionaire who had lost a wallet seemed genuinely interested in getting to know an ordinary single mother like her. During the week that followed the library event, Jane found herself thinking about Mark more often than she expected. It was not because he was wealthy or well-known. In fact, those details mattered very little to her. What stayed in her mind was the way he had listened. Most people heard only parts of a conversation while waiting for their turn to speak. Mark seemed genuinely interested in understanding people. Still, Jane quickly pushed those thoughts aside whenever they appeared. Her life remained focused on practical concerns. There were school forms to complete, groceries to buy, and household responsibilities that never seemed to end. One evening, after helping Ethan finish a science assignment and reading a story with Lily before bed, Jane sat at the kitchen table reviewing upcoming expenses. As she studied the numbers, her phone vibrated. The message surprised her. It was from the Community Literacy Program coordinator. A fundraising event scheduled for the following weekend urgently needed additional volunteers. Without hesitation, Jane replied that she would help. Supporting programs for children had always been important to her. On Saturday morning, she arrived at the community center carrying boxes of donated books and educational materials. Volunteers moved between tables while families gathered throughout the building. The atmosphere felt energetic and welcoming. As Jane arranged supplies near the entrance, she heard a familiar voice greeting one of the organizers. Looking up, she immediately recognized Mark. He had arrived as one of the event sponsors. Their eyes met across the room, and both smiled. This time, neither seemed surprised by the encounter. It felt almost natural. Throughout the morning, they worked together helping visitors find resources and directing children toward reading activities. Watching Mark interact with families revealed another side of his personality. He was patient, approachable, and surprisingly comfortable speaking with children. Ethan and Lily quickly warmed to him as well. At one point, Lily proudly showed him a drawing she had completed at an art station. Mark examined it seriously before complimenting her creativity. The little girl beamed with pride. Later, during a brief break, Jane and Mark sat at a small table near the refreshment area. For the first time, their conversation moved beyond community events and everyday topics. Mark spoke about his childhood and the lessons his parents had taught him about responsibility. Jane shared stories about raising Ethan and Lily on her own and the challenges that came with balancing work and family. There was no awkwardness between them. The conversation flowed easily, as though they had known each other much longer than a few weeks. As the afternoon progressed, the event became a tremendous success. Hundreds of books found new homes, and dozens of families received educational support. Before leaving, the coordinator gathered volunteers together for a group photograph. Standing beside Jane and her children, Mark felt an unfamiliar sense of contentment. For years, success had been measured through business achievements and financial growth. Yet moments like this felt different, meaningful. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Jane gathered her belongings and prepared to head home. Mark walked with her toward the parking lot. Before they said goodbye, he asked whether she and the children might like to attend another community event the following week. Jane hesitated only briefly before agreeing. As she drove away with Ethan and Lily talking excitedly in the back seat, she could not ignore the feeling that something unexpected was beginning to develop, not because of wealth or circumstance, but because two people from completely different worlds were discovering how much they actually had in common. The following week, Jane found herself waking earlier than usual, determined to make the most of the day ahead. She had volunteered to assist at another community event, and the children were surprisingly cooperative as they got ready. Ethan had a list of chores and school projects to complete, while Lily carried her small backpack filled with coloring supplies and storybooks. Jane packed a quick breakfast, reminding herself that punctuality was essential, especially with the busy schedule ahead. By 8:30 in the morning, they arrived at the community center, the sky still overcast with the possibility of light rain. Volunteers were already setting up tables, arranging books, and preparing refreshments. Jane spotted Mark among the volunteers, assisting a group of children at a reading corner. His approachable demeanor and gentle voice immediately drew a few shy kids to sit nearby, listening intently as he read aloud. Jane could not help but feel a growing respect for how effortlessly he connected with the children, and she silently appreciated his genuine kindness. As the morning progressed, the center filled with families, each eager to participate in literacy and educational activities. Jane helped coordinate the flow, ensuring that each child received a book or activity suited to their age and interests. The air was filled with laughter, soft conversation, and the occasional excited exclamation from a child discovering a new story. During a brief pause, Mark approached Jane carrying a clipboard. He smiled, explaining that the organizers were tracking attendance and participation for the event's success report. They discussed ways to engage more families in future programs, exchanging practical suggestions and observations. The conversation flowed naturally, blending casual remarks with thoughtful planning. Jane noticed how he genuinely valued her input, asking questions and considering her perspective carefully. The morning continued with Jane assisting at various stations, from story time to arts and crafts, while Mark supervised volunteers, ensuring smooth operations and offering encouragement. Ethan and Lily moved freely between activities, occasionally running over to show Jane something they had made or discovered. At one point, Lily tugged Jane's sleeve, pointing to Mark, who had just helped another child with a puzzle. Jane smiled, seeing the children's admiration and trust for him. As the afternoon drew to a close, the event concluded successfully, with many children leaving with books, smiles, and a renewed excitement for reading. Volunteers began to pack up supplies, and Jane helped gather items while keeping an eye on her children. Mark approached her once more, suggesting they walk outside together before parting ways. The sky had lightened, and the fresh air carried the scent of recently fallen rain. They exchanged reflections about the day, acknowledging the impact the event had on the community and how rewarding it felt to contribute. For Jane, there was also an unspoken awareness that this was more than just a day of volunteering. It marked the beginning of a meaningful connection with someone who valued integrity, empathy, and shared responsibility. As they said their goodbyes, there was a sense of anticipation, subtle but present, hinting at the unfolding of something unexpected yet promising between them. Over the next few weeks, an easy rhythm began to develop between Jane and Mark. Neither of them forced it, and neither spoke openly about the growing connection they felt. Their interactions remained centered around community projects, volunteer programs, and occasional conversations that seemed to become longer each time they met. For Jane, the friendship was unexpected. She had spent years focusing almost entirely on work and raising Ethan and Lily. There had been little room in her life for anything else. Yet somehow, talking with Mark felt natural. He never treated her like a charity case, and he never made her feel self-conscious about the differences in their financial circumstances. Instead, he listened carefully and showed genuine interest in her thoughts and experiences. One afternoon, however, Jane received troubling news at work. The small medical office where she had been employed for nearly 6 years announced a series of budget cuts. Several positions would be eliminated within the next month, and unfortunately, her role was among those affected. Although she remained calm during the meeting, the reality of the situation weighed heavily on her. As she drove home that evening, she mentally calculated expenses. Rent, utilities, groceries, school supplies, and transportation costs quickly filled her thoughts. She had some savings, but not enough to remain comfortable for long. When she arrived home, Ethan and Lily greeted her with their usual enthusiasm, and Jane immediately pushed her worries aside. The children deserved stability, not anxiety. That night, after they were asleep, she sat at the kitchen table updating her resume and searching online job listings. Across town, Mark was unaware of the news until several days later. During a conversation with one of the volunteer coordinators, he learned that Jane had recently lost her position. The information concerned him immediately, but he was careful about how he responded. He respected Jane too much to offer direct financial assistance. He knew she valued independence and dignity. Instead, he began considering ways to help without undermining either. A few days later, Mark invited Jane to meet for coffee after a community planning meeting. During their conversation, he casually mentioned that one of the nonprofit organizations his company supported was expanding its outreach department. The position involved coordinating educational programs, organizing volunteers, and building relationships with local families. As he described the responsibilities, Jane realized they aligned remarkably well with her skills and experience. Even so, she hesitated. She did not want special treatment. Sensing her concern, Mark assured her that any hiring decision would be made by an independent committee. He simply believed she would be an excellent candidate and encouraged her to apply. After thinking about it for several days, Jane submitted an application. The interview process was thorough. Multiple candidates competed for the role, and Jane prepared carefully for each stage. She answered questions honestly, shared examples of her community involvement, and demonstrated her ability to connect with people from diverse backgrounds. Several weeks later, she received a phone call that changed everything. She had been selected for the position. The salary was higher than her previous job, the benefits were stronger, and the work aligned perfectly with causes she genuinely cared about. When Jane ended the call, she sat quietly for a moment, overwhelmed with relief and gratitude. That evening, she celebrated with Ethan and Lily over homemade pizza and ice cream. Watching her children laugh around the kitchen table, she felt hopeful about the future for the first time in months. And although she knew her success had been earned through her own effort, she could not ignore the fact that one simple act of honesty months earlier had set in motion a chain of events she never could have imagined. The transition into her new position brought challenges, but it also brought a renewed sense of purpose to Jane's life. Each morning, she arrived at the nonprofit office eager to contribute. Instead of simply processing paperwork, she now helped organize educational programs, coordinate volunteers, and connect families with valuable community resources. The work felt meaningful because she could see the impact directly. Parents thanked her for helping their children access books and tutoring programs. Volunteers appreciated her organization and encouragement. For the first time in years, Jane felt that her career and personal values were moving in the same direction. At home, Ethan and Lily quickly noticed the difference. Their mother seemed less stressed and more relaxed. Family dinners became filled with laughter rather than quiet concerns about bills and expenses. Although Jane remained careful with money, she no longer felt trapped by constant financial pressure. The improvement brought a sense of stability that both children deeply appreciated. Meanwhile, Mark continued supporting community initiatives throughout the city, but his friendship with Jane remained one of the brightest parts of his week. They spoke regularly about projects, exchanged ideas, and occasionally met for coffee after volunteer events. What made their connection special was its honesty. Neither felt the need to impress the other. Conversations flowed naturally, touching on everything from childhood memories to hopes for the future. One Saturday afternoon, the nonprofit organization hosted a family appreciation event at a large city park. Dozens of families attended, along with volunteers, donors, and community leaders. The weather was perfect, with clear skies and a gentle breeze moving through the trees. Jane spent most of the morning coordinating activities while Ethan and Lily eagerly participated in games and educational workshops. Mark arrived shortly before noon and immediately joined several volunteers setting up additional tables. Throughout the event, he and Jane worked side by side, helping wherever they were needed. At one point, Ethan approached Mark carrying a model airplane he had built during a workshop. The young boy proudly explained every detail of the project. Mark listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions and encouraging him. Nearby, Lily showed Jane a colorful painting she had completed, then insisted on showing it to Mark as well. Watching the interaction, Jane felt a warmth she had not expected. Her children trusted him completely, and his kindness toward them never felt forced or performative. Later that afternoon, while families enjoyed refreshments beneath large shade trees, one of the nonprofit board members approached Jane unexpectedly. The woman praised Jane's work and revealed that attendance and volunteer engagement had increased significantly since she joined the organization. She also mentioned that several donors had specifically commented on Jane's leadership and positive influence. The recognition caught Jane completely off guard. She thanked the board member sincerely but remained humble, insisting that the success belonged to the entire team. Standing nearby, Mark overheard part of the conversation. Seeing Jane receive genuine recognition brought him tremendous satisfaction because he knew she had earned every bit of it through hard work and dedication. As the event drew to a close and families began heading home, Jane found herself reflecting on the remarkable changes that had occurred over the past several months. A lost wallet had led to an unexpected friendship, new opportunities, and a future that looked brighter than she ever imagined. Yet she still had no idea that the most surprising moment of all was waiting just ahead, and that it would reveal how deeply her simple act of honesty had affected not only her own life, but the lives of many people around her. After the family appreciation event, Jane returned home with Ethan and Lily, their laughter echoing through the small living room. The children were exhausted from the day, but visibly happier, carrying with them small handmade crafts and trinkets from the workshops. Jane set their items on the counter and began preparing a simple dinner, noticing how content and relaxed the household felt compared to months ago. Just as she was about to call the children to wash their hands, there was a soft knock at the door. She opened it to find Mark standing there, holding a small envelope with a polite smile. He explained that he had wanted to personally thank her for all of her efforts, and that there was something inside the envelope that he believed she deserved. Curious and slightly apprehensive, Jane accepted the envelope, carefully opening it to reveal a handwritten note and a modest donation for the nonprofit programs she helped coordinate. The note expressed sincere admiration for her integrity, dedication, and the inspiration she provided not just to the organization but also to the community. Jane felt a warm sensation in her chest as she realized the profound impact of her actions. She invited Mark inside, and they sat down at the kitchen table, discussing future projects, community initiatives, and personal dreams, feeling a connection that was genuine and mutually encouraging. Ethan and Lily peeked from behind the corner, shyly observing the adults, yet sensing the kindness and sincerity radiating between Jane and Mark. The conversation flowed easily, moving from stories of their childhood experiences to playful suggestions for upcoming volunteer events. And for the first time, Jane felt fully seen and appreciated for her efforts outside of her family obligations. The evening continued with simple meals and laughter, the home filled with a sense of togetherness and hope. Mark complimented the children on their achievements at the workshops, praising their creativity and effort, which delighted Ethan and Lily immensely. Jane realized that her act of honesty in returning the lost wallet had not only forged a meaningful friendship, but had also opened doors to new opportunities and recognition she never anticipated. That night, after tucking Ethan and Lily into bed, Jane reflected on the journey that had begun with a small decision, a simple act of honesty that rippled outward, transforming her professional life, her family life, and her connection with the community. She felt a renewed sense of purpose and motivation, aware that the choices she made, grounded in integrity and care, could continue to create positive changes for herself and others around her. Meanwhile, Mark walked to his car, satisfied that he had witnessed firsthand the quiet strength and character of Jane, understanding that such integrity and commitment were rare and deserving of acknowledgement. As he drove away, both of them looked forward to the future with anticipation, knowing that the bond created through respect, honesty, and shared values would guide them toward meaningful contributions to their community and continued personal growth. The next morning, Jane woke early, the sunlight filtering through the curtains, feeling a sense of calm and fulfillment that had been absent for years. Ethan and Lily were already up, quietly playing with the crafts they had made at the workshop, their laughter soft but joyful, filling the house with warmth. Jane prepared breakfast while reflecting on the previous evening, realizing how a simple act of honesty had reshaped her perspective and opened unexpected doors. Mark arrived shortly after, carrying a small bouquet of flowers, smiling as he greeted Jane and the children warmly. He complimented their creativity, and the children shyly offered him a handmade card they had drawn, which he accepted with genuine appreciation, showing how much he valued their effort. Jane and Mark shared a breakfast together, discussing upcoming community projects, charity events, and ways to involve the children, all while building a rapport grounded in mutual respect and shared values. As the morning progressed, Jane noticed a newfound confidence in herself. She understood that integrity and kindness could have far-reaching effects, creating connections that transcended professional boundaries and touched lives in meaningful ways. Mark mentioned potential collaborations with other community leaders, and Jane felt excitement at the prospect of contributing to initiatives that could make a real difference. The children, inspired by the positive energy in the room, eagerly asked questions about the activities and projects, showing curiosity and enthusiasm that Jane had not seen before. By mid-morning, Jane and Mark decided to take a walk through the nearby park, allowing Ethan and Lily to run ahead and explore safely, enjoying the fresh air and freedom. During the walk, Jane reflected on the past challenges she had faced as a single mother, realizing that her choices, guided by honesty and compassion, had led her to a place of recognition and opportunity she had never imagined. Mark shared stories of his own upbringing and the importance of giving back to the community, reinforcing the lesson that small actions can create lasting impact. As they returned home, Jane felt a deep sense of contentment, knowing that the bond formed through trust, integrity, and shared experiences had created a foundation for ongoing support, growth, and meaningful collaboration. She watched Ethan and Lily playing happily, understanding that the stability and positive environment they now enjoyed were a direct result of the values she had upheld, and she felt gratitude for the unexpected friendships and opportunities that had emerged from her simple, courageous choice to do the right thing. The day ended with laughter, light conversation, and a renewed sense of hope, leaving Jane, Mark, and the children looking forward to a future filled with promise, integrity, and the quiet but powerful ripple effect of kindness and honesty.